I'm Pablo Caif. Thanks for having me. So this talk is about my adventures navigating the new SwiftUI navigation. So by day, I'm a principal consultant, and on all the other time, I fiddle with all these smart devices, you know, HomeKit stuff. I got a whole bunch of proper HomeKit devices. I got a whole bunch of devices that I've connected through Raspberry Pis using Homebridge. So I decided to build this up. I wanted to see the status of of all my devices in my house. My wife has all these plants and stuff like that, so she wants to know the humidity in different areas. So basically what I wanted to do is have this up using WidgetKit, show the status of all my devices. You can fully configure anything, pick any category, set colors, icons, whatever you want to do. And yeah, I was dedicating when iOS 16 got announced and the lock screen widgets got announced. I went straight in and trying to get it in and for the release of iOS 16. And for me, this is a great opportunity to learn stuff that you don't get to do in your day-to-day job, right? So you don't get to use full SwiftUI. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, I don't know. But in a lot of cases, you know, you get legacy UI kit projects, get to work on combined, just use all the latest and greatest. So one of the things that I really wanted to explore was the new navigation stuff that got announced in WWDC. So before going into the new navigation, let's do a quick overview of the old navigation. So the way that it works from the release to SwiftUI up till the latest release, you would wrap everything into a navigation view, right? So it was like the unique piece that you would use if you wanted any sort of a UI navigation controller, right? So, and if you wanted a split view controller, then you would specify or add 3 root elements within that navigation view. And something that it caught me a few times was that the navigation link is coupled with the destination. And I'm going to explain a little bit later why it was causing me a lot of issues with that. And the problem with that also is that anytime you wanted to navigate, of course, you needed to have that navigation link. And there was no concept of NavigationStack. So my goal of having this full SwiftUI app ended up being like a 95% SwiftUI and another 5% UI kit with, you know, UI view controllers and hosting controllers and a navigation controller on the top. So what were the issues that I was facing? So as I said at the beginning, there's no access to the navigation stack with the old one, which makes it very hard to persist any navigation state. Any programmatic navigation you want to do, it gets pretty complex. So if you want to do, you needed to do this sort of a weird workarounds or hacks to have this navigation link wrapping an empty view, and then using these binding variables to try to activate that. So any deep linking, which I'm using a lot for any of my widgets, right? So you tap on a widget if you want to see the status of something, or if you want to turn on a light or execute some scene, I need to do all the deep linking stuff and find and present views. So it was very hard to do it. Navigation split view, also pretty hard. So my app works on iPhone, iPad, and Mac Catalyst, because that's where HomeKit is available. It's not available on Mac directly, so you need to do Catalyst. But so all what was navigation split view, it had to be a UI kit, UI navigation split controller. And in terms of the destination, that caught me a few times, because when I was, for example, maybe allocating a view model to inject into my view, I discovered that every time if I had a list with these navigation links, my destination would get evaluated. The view would not get presented, but still that would get evaluated, causing my view models to be instantiated with some side effects that I didn't really want to happen. So at the end of the day, all that part of the app was UI kit. The internals all SwiftUI. So the new navigation got announced. So basically now we got two main pieces. So we got the NavigationStack for anything that is pushing views, kind of like a navigation controller, right? You can do the push and the pop with an awareness of your stack, of the elements that you pushing in. The navigation link is a lot more succinct and it's decoupled from the destination. And the navigation split view now gives you a lot more control within SwiftUI. So you can up to high columns or maybe control the size of the columns, and it will automatically go into a navigation stack when you change horizontal size classes, and then back to a navigation split view if you go to the, for example, to the regular size class. So, has anyone adopted or started playing with the new navigation stack? Huh? Few. Yeah, so it's pretty easy to use. So it's basically you have your navigation stack and you pass as a binding variable the path. The path is just plainly an array of anything you want to have, right? And what basically you put in there is typically what you would be passing as your model object or your ID that you wanted to present in your view. So in this case, let's say I'm just passing strings, right? So I got my path in there. And when you specify your navigation links, you put in that value, what is going to be appended to that array. And the good thing is that you don't specify now the destination within the list and it doesn't get repeated. Actually, you don't want to do that. You don't want it to get it repeated on every item of the list because it also can have some side effects that might be undesirable. So you specify it outside of it, and that makes it a lot easier and a lot more succinct to control. And I'll show you how I use it in my app. So, for example, if you want to do a programmatic navigation, which is something that I also wanted to do a lot, and I couldn't do it with the old one, you just append an element to that array, and it will animate the push into the view control into the navigation controller. So the navigation split view, the way it works is it replaces this using multiple child views in this navigation view. You just basically have a set block for each one of them. And the programmatic navigation happens typically through binding variables. And as I said before, if you compress it and go in from regular size class to compact, it will switch into a navigation stack. This is how it looks like in the code. So basically, you can pass a binding variable to control the column visibilities. You can also control the column size. And in this case, having a couple of variables, one for that is controlled by the side view, which will determine what is shown in the content view. And the other one is the one that determines what's going to be shown in the detail view, right, which is controlled by the content view. So my list, I need to pass a binding variable to say whenever a navigation link gets selected, it will change this menu option and it will set the value that is specified in there. And my content, which is the one in the middle, right? I got a handy function in there, which based on the menu option, it will render a different central view. And similar to the detail, right? Detail, whenever my selected detail changes, is going to render a different detail view. And if you're curious into how I'm doing the menu option, Well, that's an example there, right? Same thing. A list with a selection, with a binding variable, which controls what's going to be displayed. So I want to tell you how sort of organize everything in my app. So first, I want to give you a little bit of context of how I decided to organize my app. So look, I don't think there is the way to go or one way of doing anything. There's always a convenient way or something that works for you. So what I wanted to do in my case is not end up with a huge views, right? And have small pieces. And this is something that I always do on the side, you know, on the sofa when I finish the day. So what I did is I split my app in a sort of MVVM, if you will, but with routers. So my window group creates the main router, right? It's one of the variables that I got. That main router will instantiate my view models. Both of them are observable objects. And of course, if I need to do any call to any backend, or in my case, specific to HomeKit framework, I have a service that is interacting with that. That makes it a lot easier to test because I'm injecting directly into the view as observed objects. And when I want to present the reviews, basically the router is responsible to say, hey, this is the view that it needs to be rendered, and it shows that view. When you want to navigate to another view, again, responsibility on the router. The router is the one who knows all of that. So it's the one that it will eventually present my, my view. Or if I'm going into maybe another level. So what I didn't want to have everything in a big router, like with all my navigation state. So I got levels, different levels, right? So next level router, same thing. Will create its view models, services, present the view. And for visual context, the one on the left is basically when it's in compact horizontal sidecast. The one on the right is when it's on regular, right? So we got side view, content, detail. So I want to try to refactor all my code and get it into using this new navigation. I started finding a whole bunch of interesting things. The first one is that in my case, if you look, the way my app works is you have all the accessories in your house and you select one and it displays details. So the characteristic firmware versions, switch on off, all that sort of stuff. You can also go into the scenes that you have in your house, and then you can go outside of that and get into the widgets, right? Into the widgets and edition view and all the stuff. So basically that means different types. And this new navigation stack says, yeah, no problem. You can actually use NavigationPath. But the problem with NavigationPath is that it doesn't provide you any visibility on what it is inside. You can only pop things out of it or push things in. And if you think into how my app is structured, I wanted to be able, if someone was using Stage Manager, for example, in the iPad, I wanted to go from the compact view with the tab bar at the bottom to the full 3-column view and maintain the navigation state. And I couldn't do that with the navigation path, which is one of the points that I got in there. And the other thing that I found that it was quite tricky is that the destination seems to be global. So, for example, in SwiftUI, when you want to present a model view, you use this sheet modifier, right? And the problem that I had is I defined the same destinations or for the same type when I was pushing elements in the array on the modally presented view, I would see sometimes animations happening behind on my root view controllers, right, or on my root views. So it got pretty interesting. So the way I found to overcome this was using the good old enums, which I think are great. For me, one of my favorite things in Swift. So the associated values allow me to have whatever is what I want to present. So for example, if I want to present an accessory, I got the actual accessory model, and that goes together with the enum case. If I want to present my list of scenes, I just use the scene. And if I want to present a particular scene, I will use I will pass the scene model. Then I don't put all my state variables in the view. I put them in the router, right? Because the router is the one who knows all the navigation state. So yeah, basically I have this published variable which holds the path, and the destination also lives in the router. So whenever different types are specified, I present different views. On the view, it looks like that. So just for sake of an example here, I'm using a state object, my router there, and I'm passing into the stack the navigation path. And the destination is delegated onto the router. So now, when using the split view, what I did is I came up with this handy protocol, which allows me to expose as a binding variable the top or the last element in my path, right, in this navigation stack. So basically, when I want to get the value of the variable, I just show the last element. So I just got one single source of true, right? The source of true is this path that I have defined. And this binding variable just exposes and allows me to append elements when I want to set values. It's a little bit more complex than that because you need to account for a few cases. But yeah, at the end of the day, that's the idea. What else? Yeah, so then when you want to access it from the split view, it's just as easy as in your list, I pass as my selection this select item binding variable. Navigation links as we do always, and then of course the detail is going to be shown by the router because it's going to be controlled by this binding variable, which belongs to the router. Another limitation or something that is very tricky to do is execute any side action when you hit a navigation link. And in my case, I needed, especially when you want to edit a widget, I wanted to prepare some stuff. So what I ended up doing is using the good old will set, which works pretty well in this case. I know some people don't like it, but seems to be working well for me. And in terms of controlling the changing size classes, as you would imagine, I'm using this environment variable, which refers to the horizontal size class. And then I've got a defined environment variable, which I call embedded in stack view, which depending on which size class, it will say, hey, you need to embed your views into a stack view, or no, just use the regular list with a selection, depending on the case. So this is basically how it looks like, right? So you can create all these different widgets, different stuff in my house. And if you look in the, for example, if I try to execute a scene, it will run the scene and go back to the home screen. If I run the app, So that's running, for example, using Stage Manager. What you see in there, that's basically running in on a split view, but because it's not full size, it's just showing 2 columns. So if I make it into a compact horizontal class, you see how it shows the top bar on the bottom, and it's also maintained the actual state that it had, right? So now, for example, if I go back and then go down into the list of scenes, pick one, right? And then make it wider to go into the horizontal side, the regular, you see how it maintains the navigation state. And I can go back to what it was before. Yeah, and that is the third, the side view as well. And it's similar also, what I was showing there with the widget is you can also control which columns you're showing or not, and you can go from different types as well. Because of this protocol that I was showing that has this associated type. So, as anyone, I went through a whole bunch of different emotions and situations while working with this, but it's always a great fun. So I try to be a good citizen and open a whole bunch of feedback. Some of them are enhancement requests, some others are just bugs, right? So the one of them is simultaneous gesture doesn't work together with the navigation link. So if you want to have a simultaneous gesture, it completely overrides and the navigation link doesn't happen at all. If you're doing funny things like embedding lazy grids into lists, when you execute a navigation link, you get multiple. All of the elements in that get pushed, so you get like a whole bunch of stack pushed into your navigation views. The other one is, the one that I was showing you earlier, right? This is an enhancement request. It's not possible to execute any side action when you hit a navigation link, unless you do this with set. The navigation path, which is the other one that I was mentioning, which is basically a type erased struct, which is pretty cool, but it doesn't provide you any visibility on what is internally. So my workaround is what I was showing in there, this using the announce. Then what else? Yeah, the navigation split view detail. This is a publicly acknowledged bug, and I hit that one fairly quickly. Yeah, when you try to change stuff, in a lot of cases, it completely ignores the updates on the detail. So what ended up working for me is wrapping the detail into a zip stack and using an UUID as an ID for some of the elements. That's pretty much it. So as a summary, yeah, I think the new navigation stack and the navigation split view are actually great. They're really good for programmatic navigation, and I think in a way they're pretty much taking away the need of using UIKit as your skeleton. If you need to access items of different types, enums are great for that, and you can use the horizontal size class to decide when when views in the app path are being resized, what to show or what not. And the binding variables can be great to sort of translate or expose that little bit of the navigation path when it goes into a navigation split view. So that's it. Questions?
Thank you, Pablo. Hang on, I've got a question.
Can you control the animation when you click an item? How is animated the data view, for example, or?
So that goes into the navigation link, right? So if I go back into Let me show you. Let's see if I can go into the one that I was showing that. It's probably. It's always hard to see.
Just specify a type of animation. That's it. You don't need to program animation yourself. You have for you program normally with UI kit. You specify a type of animation, it does it. You know, you don't need to program normally. But anyway, this is not.
Sorry, I didn't get what you.
So you don't specify the animation style.
That's the default.
Only
Default transition.
Only default transition. You don't
Yeah, it
specify.
depends what you do. Like
There's only thing I don't.
there's a default transition between like navigation destinations.
And you can't control it.
Might get you guys to take that one offline afterwards.
Okay. And another question: is this menu content and details? Is it standard for SplitView or is your choice on?
It's just a list. So the one that you were saying on the side view, the menu on the side view, yeah, it's just a list.
It's just level hierarchy.
Yeah,
Menu is the top
exactly.
level,
So you fully control it depending on the blocks, right? So you have the block on the top, which is the main side view that you have. Then you have the content. So whatever you view you put in there, which you can control with these binding variables, goes into the content. And in the details, whatever you specify in there, we're gonna get rendered.
Was there any other questions? No, seems not. Thank you very much.
Thanks.